Hello, I'm Gretchen Kennedy, and I am a religious science practitioner, and I have been since 2010. And Michelle Wadley is one of my favorite speakers. We've had her at my spiritual community, and she travels around the country to speak and teach. And we are here to discuss and review this process from her book called The Shadow Work and a Spiritual Path to Healing and Integration. And that is the class that I took. And I would love to present some of these protocols, concepts, ideas of how to elevate the energy and our capacity for joy and peace and just revealing that sort of inherent nature that we are and happiness. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I'm so glad to be in this conversation with you. It's a great conversation.
Me too. So what I would like to do is go through a few things that have made this book different from others, and some of them might generate questions as to that's very different than what my therapist would do, or what my friends might tell me to do. So I would love to review what is indeed different about this book, about this process that
Mhm.
you guide people through. The first one is what you say, or what you call mind shifting affirmative prayers. Can you describe mind shifting affirmative prayers?
Yes, yes. Thank you. And I'm glad to ask that because in the book and in the course that we teach, and it's a very important tool all around in everything that I do. Our mind governs our attention, and our attention governs our mind. It's a both end. So when in this with this work specifically, but in general, when you learn that you are connected to the universal intelligence that is everywhere, and for those listening or watching, you might call that God, you might call it love, you might call it energy, you might call it universe, you can call it whatever you want. But the quantum physicists have finally tried to show up and to justify what many of us, metaphysicians and spiritual people, have believed for a very long time, that there is a reality and a power that moves in between the cells of our being and our body. And a fact which I love to tell people because I was so shocked by it. If we were to remove all the space between what we think of as matter, as the body temple, removed it all, we would fit on the head of a pin. So what that says to me, what it says to me is that I am not my body. So
Mm.
I am the intelligence that functions through my body. And I am the part of the universal intelligence. So a mind-shifting affirmative prayer is when I remember that I'm connected to the power that is, and then I mindfully, consciously use my spoken word and my thinking to set my direction for where I want to go in my life. And so when it comes to the shadow, there are very specific ways we use those mind shifts. And that's what it is. It's a way of integrating the universal intelligence and having it show up through you as an individual. That's a very short explanation to a very complicated practice, by the way.
I love it. So in this process, how would affirmative prayers not be considered spiritual bypass?
Oh, they could be. Depending upon who's using the spiritual mind treatments, the mind shifts. They could be. What makes the difference, and I don't know if our audience knows. Let me take a sidestep for 1 second to explain spiritual bypass in the way I explain it. Spiritual bypass is when I'm trying to get from an uncomfortable experience to a happier experience, but without looking at the why and without looking at the things that are influencing the discomfort. And when we do that, we are not paying attention to a very important part that we need to in order to rise above it. So spiritual bypass is about denying our humanity.
Mm.
So the way this is different, at least the way I apply it in my books, in my courses, is that we first are willing to take a look at what is. I'm not denying it. I'm admitting I have an issue. I'm struggling. I'm not feeling well. My relationship isn't working. I have judgments. And so once I've been willing to speak that reality out, then I use the mind shifts to turn my attention inward for healing. But first, I acknowledge what is. I never go to what I want without first acknowledging what is. And that's the way it's different.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then you also state, right in the first couple of pages, you state that shadow is not dark. And, for most people, I did therapy for like 7 years. Shadow is dark. It's your worst, it's and it's where the blame and the shame and it's where all of that, those worst moments of life originate. And so how do you believe shadow is not dark?
Hmm. Well, we will always experience life according to what we name something.
Mm,
This goes back to beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Something or someone that I think of as beautiful, you might not. And actually, what I love about that is that the further along my spiritual journey goes, the further along I go, and the more I open my heart and my mind. And it's funny because I was traveling the day I was driving on the highway. I was traveling down to Delaware. And I was hard pressed to find things that I didn't think were beautiful. It was a wonderful experiment in realizing that I bring my seeing and with me, and my seeing what I choose to see and how I choose to see it causes my experience, right? So I choose to believe that my shadow is a high and holy place where even if they're my failed efforts, there's a beauty to them because when I look at them and I get to go, oh, that's what I'm dealing with. But if
mm.
I call them dark, and especially working with students and clients, if I call them dark or we think of them as dark, who's going to want to look? Right? They're not going to want to look. But I want to look because what I know is that every time I free an aspect of the shadow, I'm gathering more freedom, more personal freedom. I am gathering access to greater joy, spontaneous joy. That not that I have to go and get it, but that I accept and allow it. And so that changes. That changes that for me. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah, that's why it's to me it's not dark as I choose, and the way I hold it or the way I speak about it in my on one of the pages, I'm not sure where, is that it is simply a repository of what has happened. It's not
Mhm,
dark or wrong or evil. It
mhm,
is simply a repository
mhm.
of things that have happened in your life. And then this way we don't have to condemn it or feel bad about it. We can go, oh, it's a repository. Nobody, you don't go around, criticizing your closet for being a closet. Why criticize your shadow for being a gathering place for all that you went through? That's what it is.
Wow, I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another one that that I would love your explanation on is you say we purge the seeds of conflict
Mm.
in this process, and I'd love for you to describe that.
I'm a lifelong spiritual metaphysician. To me, all of my life is um, even if it's a little bit complicated, it's a reflection of cause and effect, right? And so the same thing as calling the shadow or recognizing it not as dark. When the seeds of my reality live inside of me, and depending upon what I subscribe to or not, again causes my worldview and how I engage the world. So when I refer to, and I think you had me highlighted before, where is that page? Or
I think it was 16. Is
oh,
that
there it is. And purge the seeds of conflict. To purge the seeds of conflict. See, that's what happens when we use spiritual mind treatment, when we use mind shifting treatments. We are actually kind of it's like having a garden. That's what it is. That's the always the most perfect analogy. When you have a garden and you take all this time to turn the soil and plant the seeds, and it's beautiful. Eventually there's going to be some weeds. There are always weeds. So we have to be willing to recognize them, not condemn them, but to recognize them and to uproot them. Those seeds of doubt, the seeds of fear, the seeds of self-judgment and blame, that's what we're purging by first acknowledging it, taking inventory around it, and then through intent, through conversation, and through mind shift, we purge them. We purge them literally from our consciousness. And to those who are more practiced with a say affirmative prayer, I will teach them how to very specifically language things so they can do that.
beautiful? Wow. I mean, that alone would probably be so life altering.
Yeah, it is. It is.
There is a quote that says there lives within you an innocence, and remembering your innocence is key to doing this work. And I would love an understanding, like if I was cruel or I was a bully at some point in my life, how am I innocent?
This is hands down the single most complicated um, distinction in my work.
Mm,
It's the most complicated. So I want to say that approaching it or really unpacking this isn't necessarily that easy. It's not easy. That's my disclaimer for if at the end of my statement you still don't get it. I believe that there is a place within you, within me, with all of humanity. There is a place of beautiful innocence, purity, your purity, that which was when you incarnated into the body temple that you are in right now. I am in all of who I am, believe that that came from a place of absolute purity. And while your human self, your when you grew, when you learned lessons and you became exposed to things that had pain or suffering or judgment or fear. Maybe you came from a household where parents fought all the time. So in order to survive, you learned a lot, your ego, and you took on a lot of behaviors in order to survive that, right? But that purity of you still exists. So it's about a coexistence, because if you did do something, and this is why hypothetical is a little complicated, but if you did something that is not kind, I would want to look at with you who you were being at the time and why did you justify that? But I can assure you that the mistakes we made when we made them were due to the consciousness we had at the time. And as we finally mature through these years, especially if you're at the point of you're wanting to practice shadow work or forgiveness work, your consciousness and self awareness has risen up. So you are ready to not be identified with the errors and the transgressions, and we've all done them. You're saying, I'm no longer willing to be limited to those. I'm willing to remember my divine perfection that was birthed in me at the time. And when we do that, and when we focus on that, we begin to remember who we are. Because a very important part of the shadow work, too, is forgiveness. So you can allow yourself to forgive yourself. It sounds like a double thing, but you have to be willing to allow it, because sometimes we're so attached to being wrong. We're so attached that we don't even want to let go of it. But the more we let go of it and allow it, then again, we free up this energy to become free from the things that we screwed up. And I want to say again, we all have a list of things that we've done: mistakes, lies, errors, transgressions, infidelity. If you were Catholic at the time, but you had an abortion and you're still carrying that guilt and shame, we all have something. But I absolutely refuse to believe that you are at the mercy, that you deserve to live at the mercy of those things. So
Mm.
this work is about getting out from under it and freeing yourself so you can be your most authentic self. That's what this is about.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the last one that I have, your quote is, "We must not fear the pain or feelings that arise." And
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
can I can say that I've done a lot of personal work, but there are still some things that I will just like, "Ugh, no, no, I can't, I'm not gonna pull that one up. I can't feel that again."
I hear you. I do. And while this book is about shadow, when my forgiveness book comes out next year, we'll have to do this whole series, because you can't really do shadow work without forgiveness.
Mm,
They are they are completely connected at the hip. And and I hear you, and I what I know though, especially in the classroom, especially in my shadow courses, both the shadow and the forgiveness courses, everything I do, everything from the moment I start with my students to the way we open, the way I set up the classroom, everything I do is excuse me, is to create an atmosphere of safety.
mm,
So if you came in unwilling, that hopefully through what I've done, through how I facilitate, and through the work itself, that you feel safe enough to go, okay, I'll go there. It's the pain is the fodder for transformation. The other thing too is that in the beginning of my classes, I ask you and all my students to get very much in touch with their intention. What is the ultimate intention? And this is wasn't it didn't start with him, but very much supported by the work by Simon Sinek when he speaks about the why. You have to know why. What is it you want out of it? For me, my ultimate why is freedom. I want to experience the freedom that comes from forgiving myself and letting go of all the judgments I have about my shadows. I don't want to be at the mercy of that anymore. So I personally will walk through baptism by fire to get to the other side. That's what I'm willing to do. And when students self-designate themselves as willing and they enter the books are good, but even the classrooms, just because we have that personal connection, then it's even more when they self appoint themselves as willing to have that much freedom. Wow, then it's open. It's wide open at the top. It becomes very beautiful. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I just want to reiterate that this is all about Michelle Wadley's book, Shadow Work, A Spiritual Path to Healing and Integration. And we are going to be exploring in detail some of these components that all contribute to purging, to transmuting, and to coming into that sense of true freedom.
Yeah, beautiful. And I want to say that when this is on the YouTube channel, there will be a link to my website for the Planned Happiness Institute. We have classes going all the time. So I can't encourage you enough. And especially right now, because this is the first time I've had the book for the class. Before that, it was the program. The program existed prior to the book, but I was because it's a launch and it's brand new. We're really making it available at a price that it will never be available again. So I
Mm.
encourage you to look at the website, get on our newsletter, or my Substack, my Michelle Wadley Substack, and my devotion is to your freedom,
Mm.
and that's how I want to show up everywhere I go. So you'll always find something valuable. Gretchen, thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this, and to anyone watching, I hope for you that you found a place in your heart that you are ready to be free. Thank you.
And Reverend Michelle, thank you for doing this for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Be well, all.